with former National Football League defensive tackle and now an NFL consultant, Chris Mamalanga.
Hello family. American Football Institute here. Our weekly Wednesday night show coming to you from Redondo Beach, California, just south of Los Angeles. And really super excited. Got a friend and a phenomenal person here this evening that's going to share some of his story and some of his experiences here with the American Football Institute. And that's none other than teacher and coach James Pilot from Elk Grove High School. How you doing, James?
All good, man. I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Happy to be here.
I know you're just coming off a spring ball and taking care of some business on some Zoom calls and stuff. So your time is super valuable for me, and I'm super thankful and appreciative that you carved out a sliver of your day to spend time with us and the American Football Institute.
All good, Chris, man.
Yeah. So how's it going for you today, man? How's everything going this off season for you?
Yeah, so we're rounding up like the end of spring football for us. Chris, we're probably by SoCal standards a very small school. So we combine both teams. So it's just one team, like all ages from grades 9 through 12. I'd say about 75 players on a good day. And we're just ripping and running, man, just trying to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So it's enjoyable for sure, man. Just all levels, you know.
Right. Part of the purpose of putting this show together and putting together our website and things like that is, we want to educate the folks out there who are not familiar with the process and not familiar with how things work here in the U.S. with regards to American football. And part of that process is just sharing stories. And so I'd like to give you an opportunity, James, to introduce yourself, share whatever personal information you want about, kind of who you are, where you are. I know we've already shared with the audience that you're at Elk Grove High School, but just want to give you a couple of minutes to kind of share with the audience, your background.
All right. Well, shoot. You probably tell from the gray, I'm a little bit up there in age. So I'm kind of like one of the elder coaches out here in our area. I've been doing it. I think this is year 23.
Wow.
I first started coaching high school at my alma mater, like 1999. So as a player, as even somebody in this country, like my parents immigrated to the U.S. My dad came first in like the late 60s. I was born in Torrance, California. And in fact, like you guys probably don't know, but me and Chris crossed paths when we were little guys. We moved out to the Bay Area, late 70s. Finally found ourselves in Sacramento. And, we're really, at least in our wave of people, kind of like the first generation that were born in this country. And we've seen it all from not quite knowing about this game to actually being able to secure an education through this game, and now seeing, the next wave of kids just going out further and like pushing the envelope more and more. So it's been a really fun ride seeing like our progression in this game as a people. On top of that, I've been coaching high school ball, like Chris says, since I got back from college. I played Idaho State, little small school.
Pocatello, right?
Yes, Pocatello, Idaho. That place is so bad that we went to Walmart as like that was like going to the club back then. Like not much to do in Idaho, Pocatello, except for go to Walmart on a Saturday. But it was like a good opportunity for me to get my education, and that's kind of what we knew back then. It's like go to school, get an education. You did with that, like we didn't really have the know-how or the training back then. But came back to California and settled back in my old hometown. Got an old friend from college to coach at my alma mater with me. We were there for 16 years, and then we found ourselves feeling like
what school was that?
Luther Burbank High School in South Sacramento.
Nice.
Truth be told, it's about 10 miles from where I currently am, but totally different demographic. The south side of Sacramento, I guess you could call like your urban kind of setting. inner city kind of setting. And where we are now was kind of thought as the suburbs when I was growing up. We didn't really go to Elk Grove when I was young. We didn't go that far out, even though it's only 10 miles. You know what I mean? So
Right.
the clientele is different, but kids are still kids. You know, every place has its challenges. But yeah, it's kind of interesting at this point seeing the similarities and the differences in the two different demographics. So, yep.
Yeah, definitely, man. I know you and I we did the opposite. I was actually born in Redwood City, and then we moved to
And you
LA,
went down. Yep.
and that's when we crossed paths in Hawthorne. And
Yes.
I remember a short time later, you guys migrated back to the Bay Area or to the Bay Area, and you've done some phenomenal things out there, James. I know there's a lot of people out there who will see success based on ESPN or based on certain things, but uh, being in LA, being kind of like the hotbed of West Coast recruiting, um, I get to see a lot of coaches. And just last night, I had a chance to spend with Lewis Powell from the
Mm.
University of Utah, and he just says nothing but great things about you and kind of the influence that you and your brother had on him. And he's one of the top assistant coaches in the country now. You know, literally, he's been offered big time jobs to leave Utah every year. It seems like, and part of that legacy of success was the seeds that you sowed way back when. At what was it? What high school was he at? Was it MA or was it
Yeah, it was MA, Menlo Atherton.
Menlo
Yes.
Atherton? You guys
Yeah.
had a program there for a while where you guys were mentoring all young men playing American football, but especially those in your immediate community, which is a small Tongan American community settling in the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's funny how life works, brother. Like when Lewis was coming up, I was in college, right, and that's what he saw. My older brother was one of his first high school coaches, and he
Mm,
knew enough about the game to kind of put Lewis in situations where he could be successful. And it is so nice to see our little brother just come up in that college game, which is it's crazy how that world works. But yes, he's been able to pick and choose like his destiny. He wants to stay in Utah and be a pillar in that community. But even though he's at Utah, he makes a lot of things happen for a lot of Polynesian coaches out here. And I'm
yeah,
not talking about locally. Like there are guys in the Pac-12 that have jobs in large part to Lewis and his hard work. So, Chris, you touched on ESPN and like maybe the perception that people get from this game from just watching the glitz and the glamour of that. There's still a lot of hard work involved in this and a lot of injustices. Even like there are things that people don't see that happen behind the scenes that will just make your head spin. Um, Lewis is one of the good examples of what can happen from hard work. So we're super proud of him and his path to where he is now. And he's not even done yet. So,
no, not at all. I mean, I talked to one of his best friends that was at MA as well, who's successful in his own right, who started off through football, ended up at Northern Arizona, and that's Isi Tuanaki.
yep.
And he's
Same,
here in
same
LA.
team. Yep.
He's
Same
here in LA
team.
now, and he's doing very well for himself. And every time I call Isi, he's practicing on his golf swing, and that's an indicator. At least it can be an indicator of success when you have that much time that you can play golf every day.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, it doesn't like our measure of like success doesn't end with like if they made it to the league or their length of their career in the league. Like we've got guys out here who are great family men, people who made it in the business sector, they can take care of themselves. EC kind of caught my eye because he was on a health kick. I don't know if you remember that, but like really got in tune with his body and health and eating healthy, and he was passing that knowledge on to other people. And I was like, wow. I called my older brother who coached both him and Lewis at that man. I was like, Suey, look at this guy right here. He's like, oh man, EC, you remember him? Like what number he was? It's like I remember the whole team, but
Yeah,
these are some of the great things that could come from coaching is when you see groups of men change their like trajectory in life, right? Like they are really soaring and they're not washed up at 18 or whatever it is when their football days are over, right?
Yeah, and as you know, as a coach, for us, I coached many years at the high school level as well. Also coached at the prep level, meaning preparing college kids to go to the NFL through their agencies and
Yep.
representation, things like that. And the thing that I will say is one of the biggest reasons why I started the American Football Institute is because American football really impacted my life in such a positive way. I wanted to share that with as many people as possible, not just Polynesians or people that look like me, but I can take whatever I learned in my culture, combine that with whatever I learned in the football culture, and help change lives and get people to succeed. Which is success doesn't mean the NFL. It's mean to me the simplest form of success or definition at least is living a good life. And if you can live a good life and
Amen.
then help a brother at the same time, that just makes the cherry on top of the whole process, right?
Exactly. Just all of the great things that this great game affords us, this game that we love. I don't think there are many opportunities for kids to better themselves and to play this game and learn from great mentors because they take these things and they apply it to their lives, right?
Yeah,
Not only on the field, um, they learn about, preparation, work ethic, being accountable, like all of these things that we kind of look towards leaders to do. These kids, if they're lucky enough to be in the right situation, they're learning these things through sports. And Chris, you've done it your whole life. Like you use this sport as a vehicle to kind of relay a message and bring people in, like bring them into the fold. Like, come on, let's take this walk.
yeah,
You're gonna learn
yeah.
how to do this, and then watch. Your life's gonna change. And sometimes our young folks look at it like, I don't know, but when they take that leap of faith and they walk with you, they figure it out, and they're like, man, their lives are changed forever, and it's a beautiful thing. That part of the
It,
game is still the same.
yeah, I mean, look, the one thing that hasn't changed from our days of playing and then our days of coaching and mentoring young people, young men, is that the game is hard. And so the microcosm that American football is based upon is really the microcosm of life because life is hard. And either you're going to step up and take care of business or you're going to run away with your tail between your legs. And that's not what we teach, right? We teach, accountability, we teach responsibility, respect, the brotherhood, all the great things that's needed to be a team player and a success in working with others. And that's one of the things that we can never take away. And there are other sports that can simulate those things, but for us, it just so happened that it was American football.
Yeah, there's something about the gridiron. Like one of my best coaches I ever had, he said those exact words to us, Chris. He's like, "My this game is a microcosm of life. Like this is a small little slice of what's out there and what you're going to deal with. And if you can deal with adversity, if you can fight through it, through faith, through hard work, all those things you talked about, then you're going to end up winning, and
Yeah,
those that take it to heart, man, really, I think the guys that really respect this game and all the things that come with it, they get that part, right? And they try their best to kind of pass it on. I think guys our age are kind of in that mode where it's like we're trying to pass it on, right?
yeah, definitely. Well, James, like I said, man, I'm super excited to have you on tonight because you bring such a wealth of knowledge, and we're both in California, but people don't realize how separated some of these regions are from Southern California. There's even another Southern California with San Diego and
Yes,
South Orange County. Then you got, the Central Valley. Then you
the
got,
sense.
the
Yep.
Bay Area, the Peninsula. You got the East Bay.
Right.
Then you're over there in Sacramento. That most people in LA don't understand how things happen in that part of California. So
Right.
thank you, man. Thank you for making time. And we've got a couple of questions that we're going to go over real quick. And
Of course.
all football related questions that some of our team members have put together and some of our audience members have requested. So we're going to run through those questions, James, and then we'll close it out. But we'll go on to our first question. How do you develop mental toughness in players who don't quite have it yet?
Oh man, that's a good one. I was talking with a buddy of mine just Saturday. He's a youth guy, and he was talking about usually a red flag that they get as coaches is when people bring their small children and say, toughen them up.
Right.
This game really isn't going to make you tougher. It really, I always believe that it's going to reveal your qualities, like where you're at in life. And I think the best way to develop mental toughness in a player is to keep putting them in positions where they're challenged and keep letting them know, like through repetition, like, hey, this is what we do in this situation. And I know we're not good at it yet, but we've got to face it and we've got to figure out what our weakness is and get better from it. Doesn't mean we're going to knock it out the park the first time, but we need to put you in these situations. Just like with a lot of good coaches say, like, our practices are going to be harder than the game. When you're faced with these situations all week long in practice, eventually when that day comes on Saturday, you're going to be met with that situation again. And a lot of times, more often than not, the kids respond. I think it can really reveal who you are rather than make you tough. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's always been my belief, Chris.
Yeah, James. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I don't know. There's very few exceptions to the rule, but typically when kids start playing this game, they're typically not very good.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not talking about talent. There's some guys that just show up and the talent is evident, but maybe the
Right.
skills aren't quite there yet, right?
Right.
And you know, you hear it all the time because in the sports world we're inundated with cliches, and I remember Coach saying to me all the time, "It's not the start, it's the finish."
Right.
And so those are the type of lessons that we kind of referred to earlier. Is like, hey man, it's going to be hard, but we're going to keep on going, and we're not going to quit, and we're going to get better day by
Right.
day. Matter of fact, even my own kids, which I know you can relate. It's hard to coach your own kid, because we have such high expectations,
Right.
and we want them to maximize. But I tell my own kids, and I said, look, I just want you to get this much better. Just
Yep.
this much better. I don't need
Every
to get
day.
that much better. I just want to get this much better day by day, and eventually we'll get there, right?
That's it. That's it. Through small measurable steps, repetition, and it could be a kid that's very timid. Like a lot of guys in the youth world, they'll get the biggest kids, but they're not quite there yet as far as them being aggressive. And sometimes you have to water it down. Like, hey, let's put 4 steps in the ground. We're going to go 4 hard steps every single time. Maybe 20 years ago, that same coach might have been saying, look at how big you are. Go kill him. What's wrong with you? It doesn't always work. And I always felt like the big guys got the short end of the stick because they're expected to destroy people right out the box. It doesn't always happen like that, as you know, Chris. So sometimes to like just make a small little measurable thing. And like you said, like we can look at those 4 steps and say, hey, how about 5 steps? We've done 2 days of 4 steps. How about 5 steps in the ground?
Yeah.
Boom. And in those ways, like I think we do reveal like they're a lot tougher than they thought, or maybe dad thought. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's some great insight right there, Coach. We'll keep it rolling with our questions here. How do you stay motivated? And when I say motivated, I'm referring to the players. How do you keep the players motivated? I guess coaches too during the summer break, as you're getting ready for fall ball. Because I know we're in the spring season now, as far as spring ball and spring conditioning, off season, things like that. But school's about to get out.
Right.
And a lot of these parents and kids, they think it's just okay. We're about to go on vacation.
We're about to go on a cruise and
About to go on a cruise, and they've been working for 4 or 5 months in the weight room and training, and then not understanding that 2 or 3 weeks can just erase all of that, right? So how do you guys get kids prepared for that family vacation or that time off away from the system, away from the program, to get ready for the fall?
Right. So our best way that we found is to kind of turn the tables on them. And it sounds like a lot, Chris, but we're a small program. But what we try to do is evaluate our kids in the off season and actually talk to them about where they think they're at, where we think they're at, and what their goals are. And then we work backwards. So let's say Simi might want to be an all league football player this year, his senior year, right? All right, so what does it take to do that? Okay, well, I have to get X amount of tackles. I've got to make every practice on time. I've got to make all my lifts. Whatever that thing is, we have a little laundry list of things. And usually one of them is I have to make X amount of practices, right? And these are measurable things. So when a kid starts catting off and going on vacations or going to the movies and not showing up to practice, all I gotta do is just pull that piece of paper. I was like, well, this was your goal, right? Like you're supposed to be a kid that's on his way to a scholarship. Yeah, that's what we talked about, right? How come we're not seeing you at practice? You know, you're not lifting weights anymore. Look what happened with your grades. Remember, you needed this to qualify out of high school. So we like to make it about them as far as setting their goals, but that also serves as a reminder that, like, look, this was what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
You, like, it wasn't me trying to yell at you. Nah, this was your goal. We're trying to help you get there. So what's going on? And more often than not, Chris, like they face up to it because there's no choice. They have to. It was their goal, right? So we
Yeah.
like to turn the table on. And I think it's kind of them learning how to be accountable. You know, like if you say
Right.
you're going to do something, when you come to football, when you're entering in a relationship with us, you might not know it, but like we're going to hold you to what you said you're going to do. As a man, that's how men operate, right?
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Definitely. We'll go on to our next question, James. What's the best way to develop mental toughness in your opinion?
I would say by far, just repeated situations where they're forced to make decisions under pressure. Practice, put them in situations where they have to apply what it is they're learning through their drills, through walkthroughs, through whatever. And it goes back to that old cliche of iron sharpens iron. You know, if we keep on letting a kid do something that comes easy to them and let them keep repping that over and over, like we're really failing that kid because there's so much else that he could develop in, right? We need to pinpoint those things and put him in situations where he's forced to develop those weaknesses in his game. Only then will they believe in themselves because, yeah, they weren't sure if they could press. Maybe they're a corner and they're no good at press for whatever reason, but we're going to keep putting them in that position in practice until they feel confident. There's only one way to do that. You got to learn by doing in this game. You know, film is great for preparation. All of the weights is great for, you know, cutting down injuries and also confidence, but you got to learn this game by doing over and over and over and being put in those situations. So that's what I would say. Yep.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of one of my good friends from Inglewood, California, Danny Katoa, who now lives in Hawaii. But he first shared with me this phrase. He said, "Pain is a gift that nobody wants." And I feel like when we put kids in a painful or a tough situation, that's where that pressure to be able to perform or to be able to improve on their techniques, that's where that comes in, right? And
Right.
so definitely putting them in challenging situations makes a lot of sense.
Right. Even today, Chris, so I was outside the weight room and the kids are coming out to go to practice. And today's our first hot day in Sacramento. It's 98
Mm.
degrees. So it's 100 and something on the field. And I was just giggling, just standing there watching the difference in their demeanor coming out. Some of them came out, they're like, oh man, it's hot. I didn't even bring the right color clothes. Some of them came out, took a deep breath, and was like, let's go. You know, and I pointed that out after. I was like, guys, we've got to fight through it. We've got to fight through it. Like it's hot. We understand that. But we got a job to do. We got to get better. All right. So we should always be trying to get better, no matter how hot or how cold it is. So
Definitely.
yeah, kids crack me up, man. I
Yeah,
love
man.
just watching little things like that about them, man. At that point in their lives, like There's nothing that could replace it. It's the best.
Definitely. I mean, with 20, over 2 decades, 23 years, 20, so many decades of experience, you know, leads us a perfect segue to our next question, which is, what are the most important skills to develop in order to be a successful high school football player?
Man, one of the big ones I would say um, is to be consistent. You got to be consistent. You can't turn it on and turn it off and expect to go far. From my experience, my best kids that I've ever had were very driven. I didn't have to go grab them or go look for them and wonder where they are. They had a drive in them and they had a consistency about how they did their business that was unmatched. You stick in this game long enough coaching, you'll have a few kids that make it to the highest level. And there's one in particular, like he's not a Pro Bowl guy, Chris, but he's been in the league for I think 11 years now, just grinding, just the consistency.
What's his name?
Terrence Mitchell. Not
Terrence
sure.
Mitchell.
Yeah, he's a cornerback. He's been all over. I think most recently he's been with the Texans. He's been with the Browns, Dallas for a stint. And just his whole path has been very symbolic of who he is as a person. Like coming from our little high school in Sacramento, nobody expected him to play at Oregon. He went to Oregon. He started for, I think, 3 years, went to the league, and he sustained a career in a place where the average lifespan of an NFL career, Chris, is what? Like maybe how many years do you think?
Well, for it depends on position, but the two positions that have the least amount of years is running back. They get hurt the fastest or the most apparently because they're just under 2 years.
Right.
And D lineman is just over 2 years.
Right.
So that's not a whole lot of time.
Yeah, and this guy, 11 years, and that's almost like a unicorn in that world.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, he wasn't the fastest kid we ever had. He wasn't the strongest, most explosive, but you could count on him to be out there doing extras. When nobody was around, T was consistently out there working on his back pedal outside when nobody was around. There's an old saying, is like, you got to dance like nobody's watching, right? Like that was him.
Yeah.
Like he had some kind of weird thing in his head where he just knew, like, I've got to keep working. So consistency, I would say, is number one. I feel lucky to know kids like that who are so driven and stay with their plan all the way through. A lot of people told him on the way he couldn't make it. You weren't gonna make it. You're not gonna make it. Well, you know what? He made it.
I'll never forget, James, when I started playing ball. I started playing ball as a sophomore in high school, and I was big and strong, but I wasn't very good. I was holding. I was playing center guard and O-line, but I'll never forget being laughed at. And that was for me. I feel like, and I was being laughed at by somebody in my family, a relative of mine that I respected. And that was kind of like the trigger for me. And I said, okay, one day you're not going to laugh at me, And so that's the beauty of these type of sports, is that a kid can start off not very good, but if he has a coach that believes in him and a family that believes in him, that's where it starts. And that's one thing that we haven't touched on, is home. A lot of times these parents are just dropping off and picking up. You know, that's about the extent of their support for a kid, just dropping them off, and sometimes they don't even drop them off. And sometimes they don't pick them up. But I feel like and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this, but I feel like soft kids come from soft parents.
Yep. We hear it all the time, right? Like the kids are different. I disagree. Kids are still kids. The parenting is what's changed these kids. The enabling, and I really believe what you say, and sometimes especially what you don't say a kid, makes all the difference. Kids notice things. Your sarcasm sometimes we're sarcastic to children and we don't even know the effect that has on them, right?
Right.
We joke about their passion, like you were saying, like your relative like laughed at something he did in football. We have no idea sometimes as adults like the effect we have on the children, right? So
Right.
lucky in your case, you were able to take that and turn it into a positive. That became part of your drive to be great, which you are.
Definitely.
But like for some of the kids, man, at that point in their lives, that's a
That can just
instant.
bury them.
Yeah, it could bury him. And like, there goes football. I'm not playing that
Yeah.
again. Or there goes school. I'm not even going to go there anymore. And sometimes I would have to check our young coaches like, hey, be careful what you're saying to him, man. Like, we joke around with these kids like they're adults, but they're not. You
Right.
know, we joke about their clothes sometimes. Like, well, do you think like maybe that's the only thing that they have right now to wear? Like, who are you to like speak on them like that? Like things
Right.
like that. As a young coach, maybe I didn't know what I know now, but like what you say and what you don't say matters. Even if
I
we're
mean,
talking about, yeah,
there's tremendous impact from words,
right,
and words can either give life or it can take life
take
away,
it away. Yes,
and I'm
and
not talking about literal life. I'm talking about that
yeah,
internal voice for some of these kids who are still trying to find themselves.
right,
They're still trying to figure out who they are. And then some young hotshot comes along and tells them
tough guy, yeah,
they ain't nothing. You know what I mean? And it's like, man,
right,
so you know, we're almost to a degree unofficially surrogate fathers for a lot of these
yes,
kids, especially kids who come from a single parent home, or maybe, in our case, our dads, they just worked themselves to death,
yeah.
working doubles and two jobs. And it wasn't that the parents didn't want to be there. It's just that every kid has a different circumstances from their home life. And we got to be, cognizant and respectful of that.
You hit it right on the head, Chris. There's a tremendous responsibility you have, and it's something I don't know if all of us respect the same way. This power that we have as mentors and coaches. Um, a lot of guys that are new to it, they tend to come in and just remember some of the things that they went through. Like maybe I got to come in and yell like my old high school coach used to yell and cuss me out and stuff, without really thinking the thing through and like what we're really doing when that's all the kid knows of us, right?
Right.
Am I that yelling guy? Like, am I the guy that's probably going to be negative? Like, what are your chances of really reaching that kid, right? Besides
Yeah.
like getting some kind of negative response. So for sure, like if you're coaching or teaching or mentoring, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility you have. And I think that should be something that's not taken lightly.
And I feel, James, there's so much emphasis on the bigs, right? What I mean by the bigs, I'm talking about Power Five football at the
Yeah.
college level, or even at the pro level. That, from my experience, man, this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about American football, is that this can really change somebody's life. You know, if you really think about it, you probably experienced this. I know I have. The kids who were the most talented, who went on to play, they're the ones who don't come back a
Yeah.
lot of times. They're
Yeah.
the one, because they get to college and then all of a sudden they're being catered to, and they start developing an entitlement mentality, like they're big timers, right?
Right.
A lot of times it's those mediocre players, or maybe those players that people didn't believe in. They're the ones who are going to come back and do and kind of continue that cycle of mentorship, or that cycle of leadership, to help these kids continue their journey of success, utilizing American football as a vehicle for some of that success.
100%. Most of the time, it's somebody who's got a story, right? Somebody who's been through it, something at home, some kind of like traumatic event. And by the grace of God, they made it through, with the help of this great game of ours. Those are
Right.
always going to be the guys that come back and are doing camps for free, or just popping up in the community asking how they can help. These people we're very blessed to have, man, because they really get it. Some
Yeah.
people come up in this game, and yeah, like you said, we never see him again. God bless them. But there was a
Yeah,
different lesson that those guys learned from the people that stay close to their community, for sure.
definitely. We'll keep on going. We have a few more questions, James, and I know it's getting late, so definitely don't want to hold you. How can players respond to the mental challenges of injury, criticism, or failure?
Whew. Yeah, so with that one, man, that's a very real thing that happens, right? And it's tough. Sometimes we'll have a kid who's got a lot of prospects who gets hurt. But what I try to tell the kids is like it's all part of this thing of dealing with setbacks. Like, how are we gonna? All right, we got hurt, or we've got some criticism. Like, how are we gonna deal with that? Really, that's one of the biggest lessons that we could take from this game is like how we respond to adversity. So if we get injured, our response should be, what can I do to get better? If we are facing criticism, our response should be, right, well, if there's a perceived weakness, what's my evaluation of that? And how can I make myself better? Instead of taking it to the negative, right?
Yeah,
And just going in the tank. Like, I really feel like that's one of the best lessons that we could get from this thing. Is like, hey, things happen in life. You might get injured. You might come across people that got nothing good to say about your game or you as a player. What do we do about it? What do we do
right,
about it? We have control over what we can control. People are going to say what they want, but I know I can always work on me, right? I don't want effort to be the reason why I'm not considered a good player.
right.
And we go from there. We keep on grinding. We keep on getting this much better every day. If we do
That's right.
that, shoot, we're all in.
One of the things I find interesting, especially us as ex-players, and then we became coaches. I know I was I have two sons. I have an older son, Matt, who's 27. Actually, he'll be 28 in a day.
Wow.
And he played football. And I feel like I was extra hard on my son, like unfairly uh, hard on my son. And now I got a younger Christian who is 11. And my point is, I learned. I feel like I learned from my older son. So now I'm trying to make some adjustments for my younger son. For you, as a longtime coach and mentor to so many players, you've impacted so many players from the Bay Area into Sacramento. How have you handled coaching your own son, who's going? I mean, I know it's out there already. I mean, he's one of the top prospects in California, if not the country. How have you been able to? What has your experience been like, and how have you handled uh, coaching your own son in Simi?
Man, Chris, it's very similar to, I guess, the classroom. Like, it after all these years of being around other people's kids, sometimes it's family, but always kids. Like, after all these years, now my own children are in school. It's just I can't really put my finger on it even still, Chris. There's a natural reluctance to coach him. We have an offensive line coach that coaches with me, and I've had the luxury of just saying, hey, let's let me have his space. We talk, but I'm not going to hammer him. Uh, he's with Coach Mo. But I did coach him once in the 10U, and I could honestly say, like, he got it just like everybody else did at that age. 10 U's, different animal.
Yeah,
Sometimes we have to be the bad cop with those boys as far as instilling the discipline and all that stuff. But it's been such a treat for him to come through those halls as a high school student, and now about to be a senior. I've had the luxury of having my offensive line co-coach him, and he takes the insiders and I'll take the tackles. But usually I do it all. Um, but it is pretty cool in that I try not. I've always tried with my son to kind of let whatever his career is, let it happen as it should.
right.
We didn't even want him to play young, We wanted to wait till he was in high school, but he kept begging and begging and begging. So we let him
Yeah.
play youth ball. But even then, I never really wanted to be his coach, just kind of
Right.
keep my distance. And something I learned from one of my friends is like maybe one of the better things you should say right after a game is like, I love watching you play, son. Because growing up, I got it the other way from my dad. My dad was going to tell me everything I did wrong before we even left the parking lot. You know what I mean? I don't know why I'm wasting my money watching your games, wasting my money. I'm like, oh man. I try to be mindful of there's like the 24-hour rule, and like you
Yeah.
don't really talk too much about evaluating like what he did technically and stuff until like maybe a day when he was little. I was like, hey son, let's go get some ice cream. That was
Yeah.
fun watching you, man. Let's go get this ice cream, and I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
dad now. So I try to keep that. But now that he's older and he's on our varsity squad, we do have real talks. But yeah, I'm real lucky to have my partner Mo there on the old line with me.
Nice. Yeah, that's a you know uh, changing hats from coach to dad. Coaches and coaches can relate. Guys who've coached for a while and have to coach their own kids, they can relate. But that's sometimes can be a sticky or a slippery slope. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
So definitely appreciate you sharing that, and looking forward to Simi's continued success. I've watched some of his clips on Huddle, and I can, you and I have seen enough film that you can tell he's been coached. Is my point, So
Mhm.
for me, James, for my younger son, he plays baseball now and basketball, but for me, I could care less about skills. I want to see effort.
Yep.
Skills will come, like you said, with repetition and with proper instruction. But we came from the old school, man. It's like once your cleats hit that grass, you better have a wiggle.
Right.
It could be the old line shuffle or the old line wiggle
Right.
where you kind of look like you're moving, but you're not really
But
moving.
you're not really. Yeah.
But
I
I
know
just
that one well.
go faster than walking. You know what I mean?
Right.
I need to see some intentional effort. That there's nothing more as a dad and as a former coach, or actually I still coach a little bit. There's nothing that frustrates me with my kids, or even kids that are my sister's kids. I'm like, hey man, you better decide. Do you want to play this game or not? Because if you want to play, then just you ain't gotta be Michael Jordan out there in the basketball court, but you can be Dennis Rodman. You can go out there and get some boards.
Effort.
You can
Effort,
be
right?
Draymond Green. That's what I love. I'm a Laker fan, but I watch the Warriors because I love competitors. I love people who compete.
Right.
And Draymond is somebody who competes. You
And
know,
Dre, there's nothing beautiful about his game, right? He's gonna
I,
go
I
out
don't even
there.
know what position Draymond really plays because he plays
Nobody
every
does.
position. He'll
Nobody
be a
does.
guard one minute, he'll be a forward. But what I appreciate is his effort. I mean,
Yep. He's gonna bite and scratch for everything he
that's right.
gets, for every rebound. He's gonna dive on the floor. He's
Yep.
gonna do whatever he can for his team to win. And that's like what makes him the unsung hero of that team and always has been.
Yeah.
He's the real glue of that team just through his effort. He's like the Dennis Rodman of this era in some ways.
Yeah. Definitely.
That
Definitely.
crazy guy. Yep.
Well, James, I know it's getting late here. We'll get a couple more questions, but
All good.
the one of the few questions, or one of the consistent questions we have every week is, what is your top three tips or advice that you can give to aspiring football players or even parents wanting to succeed in American football?
All right. So the first thing I would say um, is you've got to believe. You've got to believe that it's possible. Um, this game, and I 100% believe this is the truth. There's somewhere for everybody to play if you've got the desire and you've got the work ethic to do it, right? But that's not easy to do. Uh, it's not easy to go out there when you're not feeling good and run and condition or study film or lift weights or one of the multitude of things you have to do to be a good football player. But if you're willing to do the work, there are so many levels to this game that you can get in. You can find an education, help get that thing paid for using this game we love. And once you get in there and get your foot in the door, you'll probably be part of this movement that we're in of giving back. It's just such a beautiful game, but you got to believe that you can make it. Secondly, I would say it has to do with like timing. What I mean by that is the time's got to be right for you to make all of the sacrifices that it takes, right, to get through the door. You got to be, like I said, consistent. You got to take the necessary time it takes to prepare yourself, to condition, to do the work, all of that stuff. Your timing has to be right. This isn't something where you could just play 1 year and like, I think I'm gonna take 2 years off and then come. Very rarely can a guy really do that and get to the end game that he wants in this game. The third thing is like this might be a personal thing of mine. I think it's important to have a vision at some point, and not just dream about it. You got to figure out how to set a goal, find measurable steps to get to that goal, and find a way to have that plan somewhere, whether it's written down, it's on your phone, and you go back and you look at things because if it's a measurable step, anybody could look at it and tell you if you did it or you didn't. Right. So if you have a grand plan to get a scholarship from Utah, all right, what does it take to get there? Get your goals going and make sure they are goals that have measurable steps. And I've done that myself with like not only football, but whatever goals I really wanted to achieve, and try to figure out what steps I need to take. And then little by little, I chopped away at it. I would say those three things would probably be your best bet.
Man, that's awesome, man. I feel uh, it's interesting because out of those three steps, two of those, actually all three of them, belief, work ethic, and vision, those are all pretty much decisions from the neck up.
Yeah.
So how many times have we seen somebody super talented but they didn't have belief,
So
and
many.
then, or they didn't have vision, or they didn't have work ethic, and
Right.
man, we truly feel blessed to have you sharing. I mean, we could sit here for hours and hours talking about football, and football for me, James, is really just a facade for for getting our kids educated and getting them to figure out what they really want to do. Because we all know that every player from the lowest level to the highest level are going to hang those cleats up one day. Yeah, but if we can utilize this vehicle to help them in their process, we're one of the handful of people out there who've experienced it firsthand.
Yes,
And
sir.
to be able to get our education paid for and to be able to share that knowledge is truly something special.
I feel blessed to have come up in this game, Chris, just like you. And it's weird, like, well, maybe not weird, but it's sure nice to see that we've all found a way to pay it forward. You and this platform that you created here uh, with AFI, man, it's great. We can give back and show people that it's really a doable thing. It's not a pipe dream to think that you can go and use this game, that we love and we respect to really help you get along in life to where you could someday even give back yourself.
One of the questions that I haven't had a kid answer it correctly yet, most parents and even some coaches, I'll ask them, I say, who's the highest paid person in the NFL? And typically they'll say, you know, uh, Patrick Mahomes, or like a famous player, Tom Brady, and things like that. Which, yes, they do get paid a lot of money. But of all the great players and all the high paid players in the NFL, the highest paid person in the NFL that doesn't tackle anybody, and he doesn't work out 6 days a week, and his name is Roger Goodell. He makes upwards of $50 million a year. Um, still being a part of football, but not having to tackle nobody, not having to block anybody, not having to catch any ball touchdown passes or
His
anything.
knees work just fine. No back problems.
And you and I can relate, how many times has your hip or your low back just give out on you walking up some steps,
Facts.
There is a sacrifice,
For sure.
We're not promoting just the good stuff about football. We know that there is a sacrifice, and that's your physical well-being,
Right.
But hey, man, it's been a blast, man, just hanging with you. I look forward to getting you back on here in the future. I'd like to just thank you and appreciate everyone for their support for this platform and this brand, American Football Institute. I'd like to invite you guys to like and subscribe our page on our Facebook group, American Football Institute group, as well as our YouTube channel. Visit our website that we're developing now to provide more services related to American football, especially for those who are domestically here and for those who are here in the U.S. Any way that we can assist, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, James. Much love to you, man. Ofatu. And we'll definitely stay in touch, brother.
Yes, sir. Right.
All right, guys.